song sheets, I ask that if you have more than one nearby you, please pass around. I'm gonna invite Jake. We sang this hina, this dirge together at the beginning. We're going to do it this time with the Hebrew. If you don't have the words in front of you, Yanananai works just as well. We'll do it one time, Yanananai together, and then with the Hebrew, which is transliterated on your song sheet. Invite up America Ali Yaya, to say her name right, to a leader from We the People, Michigan.
Assalamu alaikum, everybody. Peace be with you. Thank you so much for being here. My deepest love and care to my Jewish brothers and sisters acknowledging today. Thank you all to whom wore black today in solidarity. I'm immensely proud of those who have taken time to attend this protest, so please give yourselves a round of applause. Thank you so much for being here. Just a special thanks to CARE Michigan and Detroit Jews for Justice for hosting such a crucial and important protest in the name of our brothers and sisters who are locked away in this country's detention camps for simply wanting a better life. I am still in shock that this is even happening, that we are all here congregating in the name of freeing people, freeing humans, freeing fathers and mothers, daughters and sons, uncles and aunts, freeing them because that is what is right. That has always been right, and that will always be right. Right here in our own community, we have a crisis in the Dearborn jail, who is willingly assisting ICE with their raids. Yes. Shame.
Shame. Shame. Shame. Shame.
They are willingly assisting ICE. Let that sink in. Now think about this. We also have a chance to save our community by speaking up about it and protesting and working against the cooperation of police departments and ICE. I feel for the families that are being forcefully separated from each other and caged like animals as if seeking asylum from poverty and violence and war is voluntary. My family immigrated to Detroit 22 years ago in search of better opportunities, a better sense of community, a better life away from our war-torn country, Yemen. Now it's breaking news because of all the chaos happening there, with the bombing of school buses filled with children trying to go to school, and villages filled with families who died from the biggest famine in our century. If my father had taken his chances and decided to stay, and not to bring all 11 of us to the United States, I really cannot express how scared I am to think of what could have become of us, like truly. I'm asking, I'm demanding at this point, a call to action to allow state ID and license for our friends and families who just came here to and were undocumented files. At this moment, I will be reading from the first page of a book that has not left my mind, even after reading it from one of my college courses a few years ago. It's titled, and I apologize in advance, Survival in Auschwitz, and was written by Primo Levi in 1947. And again, I deeply apologize in advance for the sensitive content. You who live safe in your warm houses, you who find, returning in the evening, hot food and friendly faces. Consider if this is a man who works in the mud, who fights for a scrap of bread, who dies because of a yes or no. Consider if this is a woman, without hair and without name, with no more strength to remember, her eyes empty and her womb cold, like a frog in the winter. Meditate that this came about. I commend these words to you. Carve them in your hearts, at home, in the street, going to bed, rising. Repeat them to your children. Or may your house fall apart. May illness impede you, and may your children turn your faces from you. This was written in 1947, and we are in 2019. Again, I'm deeply sorry. We need to be there for our friends who are undocumented, our friends and family. We need to give them space and the ability to fully embrace in the freedom we preach, instead of the constant criminalization and hateful rhetoric the media, politician, and anyone else in a privileged position can use simply because they can get away with it. I am urging you all to unite and organize in the freeing of our neighbors and friends who are being inhumanely locked in cages at our borders. I also urge you all to organize behind the movement of giving license and state ID to our undocumented friends and neighbors who are already here. Governor Whitmer has already backed the idea and process. And what we need to do now is continue with this momentum and make sure it goes through. Yes. I'm pleading you all to please do not stop organizing and protesting. Our work does not go unnoticed, no matter how small and minuscule people may think it seems. I promise you, you won't regret being on the right side of history this time. And with that, I will end with this quote. Those who do not learn from history are doomed to repeat it. Thank you so much.
Last November, along with others, I helped organize a rally outside of El Paso, Texas, in Tornillo. Some of us here today were there with me as well back in November. I went down to Texas, to Tornillo, because of the detention center there holding children, holding kids aged 13 to 17. I grew up in San Diego, another border town. It was nothing like El Paso. It was nothing like the militarization that I saw on the border there. It was nothing even compared. And I sit with the irony of the fact that I drove 1,000+ miles to get to our southern border, and I sit just a few miles from our northern border. And there's not anything like the militarization on this border as there is on the southern border. And we all know there's crime that happens across our border here. We all know that bad things happen, that people are brought across the border. But we don't care. Our government doesn't care. And it's easy to figure out why. Because the people coming across our southern border are brown. Because as much as anything else, this is all about racism. This is all about racism. Truth be told, I didn't have to go to the southern border to find violence against people of color, for sure, or against the immigrant community. Because whether it's violence happening at the border with parents being ripped from their children's hands, parents suffering that violence, the violence of ripping fathers from their children here in our city, the violence of holding people in detention in our jails. It doesn't have to be a 1,000-mile journey to find it. It's happening right here. We like to think of this far away. We like to think of this 1,000+ miles away on the southern border. That's what the media keeps saying. On the southern border, on the southern border. It's in every town. It's in every city. It's in every state. And it buoys me to see us all here gathered together, continuing to raise our voices, demanding that this stop, that the violence stop, that we can show humanity to each other.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Jeffrey Falek. I'm the rabbi at the Birmingham Temple, a congregation for humanistic Judaism. I want to start by saying that I love this country. I love this country for its promise of freedom. I love this country because of the prominent message on that 305-foot statue in New York Harbor, holding aloft that torch of liberty and bearing the words of a Jewish woman, "Give me your tired, your poor, your huddled masses yearning to be free. I lift my lamp by the golden door." I love this country for taking in my family and millions of others. I love this country because, in the words of Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, it belongs to all of us. Now, it is true that this country was born in sin. The land upon which we stand was ripped away from its original inhabitants. Our economic foundation was established on the backs of enslaved African labor. And our ambitious effort to create a free democratic republic was formulated by white landowners who wanted to benefit themselves and themselves alone. But these sins have been redeemed by the increasing diversity of our people, so determined to extend the aspirations of our country to all of its inhabitants, that word of its promise of freedom soon spread beyond our borders, beckoning others from distant and neighboring lands to join us. You could almost see a smile on the face of the mother of exiles. Those who came to appreciate the growing diversity of our nation endeavored to greet the newcomer as a welcome addition to our country, only to find that others were filled with fear and suspicion, determined to thwart and transform America into something ugly, anxious to wall off some Americans from others, to wall off our entire nation from the world. The results have been monstrously cruel. In an anti-immigration maelstrom, recalling only the 1882 Chinese Expulsion Act and the 1924 Immigration Act, which shut our doors to refugees from Asia, Southern and Eastern Europe, today's know-nothings, today's nativists, who now hold the reins of power, are sowing the wind with hatred. And we are reaping the whirlwind. It is a whirlwind of racism and xenophobia that portrays the search for freedom by brown and black and other non-white immigrants as an invasion of our country by thugs animals, they call them, rapists and criminals. It is a whirlwind of racism and xenophobia that inspires white supremacists to take up arms against innocents. It is a whirlwind of racism and xenophobia that has swept up thousands and thousands of law-abiding, undocumented residents, tearing apart families on the unfounded claims that they are taking jobs from Americans, even as our government shields their greedy, abusive, and exploitative employers. It is a whirlwind of racism and xenophobia that has built concentration camps, and yes, that's what they are, to barbarically kill thousands of children separated from their parents and loved ones, and thousands more parents and loved ones separated from each other. As a Jew, I am informed by Jewish history. As a Jew, I am reminded how this same racism and xenophobia resulted in laws that barred the gates of deliverance to my own people at the very moment when it would have saved millions of lives. As a Jew, I am inspired by our self-imposed promise of never again will we countenance the dehumanization of any person, nor stand by as innocent people are made to suffer through hateful attitudes and policies. And as a Jew, I am perplexed, dismayed, disappointed, and yes, angry at my fellow Jews who see no problem with this whatsoever, who have joined the racists and xenophobes in determining that those seek refuge here are unwelcome, and who have utterly and completely failed to understand the meaning of never again. I'm also a humanist, and as such I look to the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, to which the United States is signatory, as one of humanity's most profoundly moral statements. Thus, as a humanist, I am committed to the conviction that all human beings are born free and equal in dignity and rights. They are endowed with reason and conscience and should act towards one another in that spirit. As a humanist, I fervently believe in its assertion that every person has the right to life, liberty, and security of person. As a humanist, I support the moral teaching, no one shall be subjected to torture or cruel, inhuman, or degrading treatment. As a humanist and as an American, I hold dear its assertion that everyone has the right to seek and to enjoy in other countries asylum from persecution. I love this country, especially its redemptive diversity. Our diversity represents the best of America. It's on display this evening as we gather here together in solidarity. Jews, Muslims, Christians, believers and non-believers, every race, ethnicity, and heritage, united by a thirst for justice, united by a commitment to human dignity and freedom for all the inhabitants of this land, and united by a pledge that we will preserve that torch of liberty, and it will remain a beacon for all humankind. It is my honor to present my colleague, Rabbi Alpert Jake.
Thank you all for coming out tonight and raising your voices for justice, to ensure that all people, can you not, is that better?
Yes.
Thank you all for being here to raise your voice for justice and to ensure that all people who come seeking help and refuge in our country receive it and are cared for, just as I would hope that my own children or my family would be cared for, and as they were cared for in generations that came in the past. I'm about to share a piece with you that is entitled, "Woe to the Heart That Is Broken." All right, I've got to talk really close to this wine. All right, so that's fine. I'll try not to swallow it. I'm about to share a piece. It's called "Woe to the Heart That Is Not Broken." It's by Rabbi Aryeh Cohen, and in it, you're going to hear a line that's repeated several times. It's, "In truth, it is amazing that the world is still standing after so many cries for help such as these." You have them written on the sheets that you received as you came into our demonstration here. And I want to welcome you to join in with me as a refrain when we get to that line. It'll come several times. The quote That quote is from the Eish Kadosh, the sacred fire that is something written in the Warsaw Ghetto by colonialist Kalmish Shapira. And please join in and be a part here of this recitation, which will follow the tune for Eicha, the Book of Lamentations that Jews just together recited on Tisha B'Av, the day that commemorates the destruction of the temples a couple days ago. Woe to the heart that is not broken, and to the eyes that do not cry. Woe to the ears that do not hear, and to the mouths that do not scream. And in truth, it is amazing that the world is still standing after so many cries for help such as these. Woe to us that closed our hearts. We have become uncircumcised of heart and mouth. For lo, if we have not cried out, we are in agreement. We have become entrapped in the counsel of evil. And in truth, it is amazing that the world is still standing after so many cries for help such as these. Woe to the government that governs in this manner, and to the border patrol that behaves like stormtroopers. And where are we, the messengers of righteousness? A soft murmuring sound rather than the blast of a trumpet. And in truth, it is amazing that the world is still standing after so many cries for help such as these. For these cries and venalities were not committed far away. Oh God, in our name they do these disgraceful things. For these actions are very close to us, and our mouths are silent and our hearts are asleep, and still we are not outraged. And the truth, it is amazing that the world is still standing after so many cries for help such as these. On the day we cried out, and no one answered us, we said it shall not be thus in our places. When the time comes, we promised we'll rise up at the head of the people. And yet here is the day, and where is our reaction? Where is our outcry? We mumble, God have mercy, and we just say another prayer. And the truth, it is amazing that the world is still standing after so many cries for help such as these. Is this the fast that I would choose? A day in which people hunger for bread? Is this not the fast I would choose? A day on which we rise to righteousness? A day of opening the fetters of wickedness? A day of sending the oppressed free? A day of recognizing the humanity of people? Thus we will redeem our places and the place of the eternal. For the thing is very close to us. It is in our mouths and in our hearts to do it.
I'm gonna call up Paula. Paula Astudillo from Movimiento Cosecha.
Good evening. I am Paula Astudillo from Movimiento Cosecha, Detroit.
I'm a Southwest Detroit resident. I came to this country almost 2 years ago from Chile, South America. I'm a feminist woman, a worker, a mother, and a strong believer on unity against all kind of oppression, and particularly today to the fight for the dignity that all immigrants deserve. Actually, I am lucky enough to have a paper like this and a plastic in my wallet today, but my best blessing in my life has been to learn that solidarity and unity within the working class and among the working class and among peoples is the only way for our total liberation and through freedom. Not the market freedom, but the human freedom. Movimiento Cosecha is fighting for dignity, respect, and permanent protection for 11 million undocumented in the United States. We are standing here today in solidarity with Detroit Jews for Justice in our neighboring city of Dearborn, which has the largest immigrant population from the Middle East in the United States. Dearborn, Michigan is known for this all across the country, but Dearborn is nothing without their Arab immigrant community. From the bakeries, to the clothing stores, to the schools, to the parks, to the restaurants, the Arab immigrant community is Dearborn, or Dearborn is the Arab immigrant community. We are here in unity. Arabs, Latinos, Chileans, Mexicans, Jews, whites and blacks. We all demand that the city of Dearborn ends their contracts with ICE. Because this is an attack on their own city, on the people that make this city move, on the neighboring Latino community, and all those that live, study, love, work, spend money, and travel through this culture city. Every day we hear about raids across the country, but many fail to realize that all our immigrant communities here in Michigan, in Dearborn, in Detroit, in Hamtramck are under attack. We live in fear daily, unsure if we will make it home to our families due to the lack of a license or an easy and simple way to gain legal status. It is an insult to Dearborn residents and all immigrants to know that their own officials, who were sworn to protect and service, are willing to separate families.
Boo. Shame.
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 This disregards immigrants' efforts to build up the city of Dearborn with their contributions. Store owners, taxpayers, culture, that the taxpayers are paying their positions, and they treat them inhumanely.
Shame.
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 Michigan has the second highest ICE detention rate in the nation. Shame again. 80% of those in detention have no criminal record at all.
Shame. Shame.
Most of them are there due to no license, and for a traffic infraction, such as a headlight that is not functioning, we ask for the city of Dearborn to open their eyes and their hearts to what this contract means and what it is doing to their community and residents that have contributed to the growth of this city. On behalf of Cosecha Detroit, we ask for you to end your contract with ICE and build a stronger community. Building community and stronger families and not separating them and engaging them. This is also an invitation for all of us because together we can make change. Thank you for your support.
Can end the contract. Can end the circle maker is here with us this evening. We've got just 7 more minutes. You all are amazing. In just a minute, I'm going to invite up our 3 Congress people who are so graciously have joined us here tonight. Before, so you all can be ready. They're going to read for us a reading that has been recited at more than 50 actions, gatherings like these that have happened across the country. Before I invite Representative Dingel Tlaib of the 9th District, Rashida of the 13th District,
and believe in humane treatment of everyone. So I'm so happy and so pleased to see this beautiful crowd here. With that, I'm so glad also to be in our my good college district, Congresswoman Debbie Dingel. We really are double trouble. We let Andy come along sometimes. Once in a while. I think in here, with that, and I got to tell you, Rep. Levin has been a tremendous asset to this issue and has always been wonderful trying to humanize the impact of what's going on with these camps and detention processes all across this country. And I really want to thank you for the leadership.
Hey, Jake. So we're going to read a little prayer together, and my sisters, we're going to stick this thing right up close to our mouth so everybody can hear us, right? Because that's the way this works. And I just want to say, you know, for Tish B'Av, dark clouds are appropriate. A few raindrops cannot scare us away. Why don't we cry enough tears to drown all the injustice in Dearborn and Detroit and Michigan and America and have a flood of justice to transform our immigration policy. So we have a little reading that we're going to do together. On Tish B'Av, which fell on Sunday, Jews chant, Aicha, listen to the destruction of ancient Jerusalem. Hear the city weep for her children. She weeps bitterly in the night. Her tears are upon her cheeks. We wail and bemoan the world as it is.
Jewish tradition teaches that our individual laments form a collective lament, gathering the disparate parts of ourselves into a unified sorrow. It comes from the bones, from breath. The city weeps, and we weep with her. Her wails are our breath, her voice in our mouth.
This week, the Jewish community begins to count 7 weeks to Rosh Hashanah, the new year, ushering in the world as it should be, articulating our recommitment to the possibility of a different world. Today we blow Shofar to bring that world forward, to mark the change. The Shofar transforms that which is of this world, the breath, into something entirely new, something of the world to come. With our voices, we cry out in sorrow, we cry out for justice, we raise our voices through the call of Shofar.
God of transformation, God of teshuvah, may this call of the shofar be a bridge between Olam Hazeh and Olam Haba, between this world and the world to come. May this call reaffirm for us that just as we can be transformed in the season of turning, our world too can be transformed.
God of transformation, God of teshuvah, may this call blast into our consciousness the possibility of redemption, of an end to the dehumanizing and targeting of immigrants, of a world in which all people find sanctuary, safety, and home.
God who releases the bound, who strengthens the weary. May this call fortify all those impacted, suffering, targeted by the cruelty of ICE, immigration policy, and the current administration. May this call fortify those who stand, organize, and resist in solidarity with our immigrant neighbors. May this call fortify our reserves of courage and hope and lead us toward action.
May I say one thing? Nobody told me to wear black today. But I was in Washington, D.C. and got off the plane to come here because I was in Washington for gun violence. And orange is the color of against gun violence. But I also want to say that I stand with my sister and my brother. I didn't even, honestly, I just got asked, would I come to read a Jewish prayer? And with Rashida, I wanted to stand in solidarity with the Jewish community because I represent Dearborn, the largest population of Arab Americans, Muslims in this country. And we must all I am proud of that, but we've got to stand up to hate. This country is being divided by fear and hatred, and it's wrong. And we stand here today, members of all faiths. I see Cindy Garcia here, whose husband was deported to Mexico. I see people of all faiths that are being targeted. We must stand up to hate. And every one of us has that responsibility. Every one of us. When we see it, speak up and speak out. And we want to organize a Take on Hate effort as well in the next couple of weeks.
Rabbi Elena knows I just came from Calhoun County. I did a surprise unannounced visit to the detention center there. And I can tell you when I got in there, they refused my entry to come in and see the conditions. I'm going to still go back. And one of the things that I ended up doing, we were prepared and we saw four folks that were detained there. They're being detained there. And one is a survivor of human trafficking. And she's there for 10 days, severe PTSD, still has not got her medication. Oh, wow. I just sent an email out to ICE in regards to that. Another man who was complaining, he's diabetic and complaining about the fact that he's been there, it's going to be September 1st, he'll reach 180 days in detention, which now would violate his civil liberties. And when we talked to him, he broke down 3 or 4 times, just feeling helpless, doesn't know what to do. Another woman all the way from Toledo, Ohio, brought here to Calhoun County, and she told me the first day they put her in a room, and she's like, where am I supposed to sleep? There were all these other people there. She ended up having to sleep literally next to the toilet for 3 days. This is happening right here in Michigan. And so I want you to know we have to continue demanding access into these facilities to expose it. Because the way we're going to get the city of Dearborn and all those to really, truly divest, to really, truly disconnect with ICE is going to be to push that they are currently violating national detention standards. There are standards, believe me, there are. We are just not forcing them to comply with them. And we have to comply, especially if it's medical, especially if they're survivors of trauma. This young woman was just in tears. Her 6-year-old daughter, she has no idea how she's going to be able to be reunited with her. And so it's really important as we do this to elevate, is to give the evidence to places like this who are like, well, we're not involved in picking up. We're just holding them until we send them to the airport. And you hear them say this. Trust me, I have a great relationship with the chief here. He's always been extremely sympathetic with sometimes our call for justice and accountability for even his own department. But the way we do it is by telling him how our own administration is violating people's civil liberties and civil rights and violating international human rights. And that's when we have to tell them they have to step away and not have connection with somebody that is an organization that is so rogue, so un-American, and so not who we are. And so I appreciate you all being here and for your courage to stand up today.
I just want to, we're just like a Jewish kid, a Christian kid, and a Muslim kid from Detroit up here. And on behalf of the Jewish community, I want to thank all the Christians and Muslims and humanists and atheists and everybody who came out to pray with us today for justice. And I want to just invite you all. This is awkward. I want to invite you to a funeral. We're fighting deportations of all kinds, and we're fighting deportations of Iraqi nationals from our southeast Michigan and all around the country. And one Iraqi national who was deported in June, Jimmy al-Dawood, who was never set foot in Iraq in his life. He was born in a refugee camp in Athens, who had schizophrenia and had diabetes, and he was deported, picked up off the streets of Detroit, and they said, if you go with us quietly, we won't make it difficult for you. And they flew him to Iraq. How much money do we spend on this, by the way? 2 ICE agents all the way there and back, plus him. Just for what? They didn't let him get any money. They didn't let him get any insulin. They didn't let him pack a bag. They didn't let him call his family. And he died on a week ago today. And because of a diabetic crisis. And on yesterday, another person deported to Iraq, who also is Chaldean, a Christian, who is going to the church, was shot in the leg 2 times. And he survived. He's in the hospital. And we're going to have to tell this story. People are going to continue to die at our border and in these countries when we deport them for no reason except to expand the base of a white supremacist. Not in our country. So we'll find out when we get Jimmy's body back. What do you think it feels like to be a freshman member of Congress who tries, we go to try to help the people, and the big accomplishment is to get somebody's body back here so he can be buried next to his mom? I'm sorry, that sucks. That does not feel like an accomplishment. So we need you all. We go to Washington, but I'm telling you, none of us believe that we make history. You make history. And we need you to press the Congress, to press the city of Dearborn, to press the administration to change course now and provide dignity to immigrants in our country. Thank you.
NBC says that 24 people have died in ICE custody since Trump came to office. We'll take a moment of silence for them and for Jimmy al-Dawood and everyone and every child, especially, who has died in this crisis. And that moment of silence will close with the Shofar, which I'll invite you to call with me. Call with me. Tekiah. Shavarim. Teruah. With this last one, we're just gonna let our hearts break. Tekiah Gedolah.
alaikum, everyone. Shalom to each and every one of you. I really want to thank each and every one of you for being here today and standing in solidarity for issues that deeply impact our community. I've been tasked with closing this program out, and I will close it in the best way I know, which is in community and in prayer. So I ask, my Lord, help us against people who practice corruption and spread disorder. And this is a verse from the Holy Quran, and it reminds us to stand firm against corruption and disorder and oppression. And it doesn't matter who it's impacting, but when it impacts someone in our community, it's something that we need to resist against. I want you to join me in saying amen or ameen or whichever way that you pray, or if you don't pray, to complete some of these final prayers. May our sisters and brothers impacted by incarceration, detention, deportation find protection, liberation, justice, and reunification with their families. Amen. May we all be truth tellers and advocates for what is just and what is holy. Amen. May we have the courage of Musa, alayhi salam, Moses, in the face of the worst tyrant, Fir'aun, Pharaoh. Amen. May we continue the legacy of the righteous resistors of our ancestors. Amen. We ask that in community that we call upon our elected officials, especially here in the city of Dearborn, to address the issues that we have in our backyard. As many have said before me, these issues are not just around the country, they are in our backyard. I also want to give special thanks to the folks who put this program on. Please join me in giving special thanks to Ben the Ark, to Detroit Justice, Youth for Justice, Care Michigan, the Meta Police team for supporting this program as well, We the People, our elected members in Congress for coming and showing solidarity with the communities that they serve. Thank you. As well as the rabbis and religious leaders who have taken the time out to really show what resistance looks like from the faith community, because we absolutely should be at the forefront of addressing what is unjust in our country, just as many have before, like Martin Luther King and so many other faith leaders. Now we conclude our observance, as is typically done, with a conscious deed of rising up out of mourning and renewal of our commitment to build a just world. Now, bound together in grieving, we rise up together in promise. Those who have been able to sit on the floor in mourning, physically rise up. All of us join in metaphorically in uprising. Out of mourning, we rise up and we say together, rise up, rise up, rise up. Thank you. Assalamu alaikum.